Good evening and a very cordial welcome to the first National Cybersecurity event. My name is Jochen Dürr, I'm the Chief Risk Officer of SIX, and it's a particular pleasure to welcome you all online today. I believe we have something like 500 participants, which is great to see. Yeah? I wanted to especially welcome, obviously, our speakers who are with me here in the Convention Center of SIX tonight. And it's a very big pleasure to see that from various parts of the industry, of academia, of regulation, you came over to join us on this event today. It's the first time that we organize jointly SIX, the Swiss Finance Institute, and the Swiss Risk Association, such an event on a topic whose importance couldn't be higher, especially also in this particular year. I don't want to say much more, but really, again, thank you for joining wherever you are watching this event. Sandro Schmid, who is chairing the Swiss Risk Association, will lead us through this, what I believe, very interesting, diverse and insightful program. And I wish you all a very good session. I wish you all a very insightful journey over the next 2 hours. And also during question and answers, please submit your questions so we can have a dialogue also with you engaged in the room. So, Sandro, please, may I welcome you to stage and lead us through the program.
Thank you very much, Jochen. Thank you. Also, good evening, everyone. Nice warm welcome from my side. I hope you sit somewhere cozy in front of a chimney with your iPads and enjoy the event. Now, I would like to introduce you to Neal Coray. He's kind of an insider, but not because of trading, because he's employed by SIX. He heads the cyber defense at SIX. He's an open-minded IT security leader with more than 10 years of experience in the security industry. This in different functions, such as security engineer, security consultant and leader of Security Operations Center, computer security incident response teams, and cyber defense organization. He further acts as a consultant for managed security services and security operations centers, and is a participant in various security groups. Before joining the SIX group, he was the head of managed security services at Swisscom. He will tell us now what are the current trends in cyber risk, and I'm really looking forward to your contribution, Neal.
Good evening also from my side, and thank you for the FINMA presentation. We are proud the third year in a row we already run a red team assessment, and we also use your portal already to report something. Here the introduction already happens. I will provide you a short brief overview about current cyber threats and attacks which we are observed and we are still observing. Today's agenda. What I will present are favorite attack methods we are facing at SIX, the threat landscape in Switzerland, the European Union and other countries, and at the end, key findings out of it. Let's start with the threat situation. About more than 90% or even higher, the start of a cyber attack is an email, a phishing attack. That's the starting point for all cyber attacks we observe and cybercrime mostly. And the attacker, why they do this? They attack us, the human, the weakest point in the whole chain. Let's take a look which cyber attacks we are observing here at SIX. Of course, social engineering, the phishing part I already mentioned here. That's just when I look at how many hours we spend here, people-wise, manpower, social engineering, which concludes phishing and also voice scams are behind it. That's number one on our side. Number two are vulnerabilities in software and hardware, which we need, IT colleagues need a lot of effort to patch and patch again. That's a Deming cycle, which at the moment I don't see an end of this. Just the speed is increasing. You need to patch. And even when I remember back when we had a vulnerability was disclosed, you had some days or weeks to react. Now we're talking about minutes to hours to react. Then what is increasing are the DDoS attacks since this summer, again in Switzerland as well, not only outside of Switzerland, and we were also attacked multiple times by DDoS attacks. That happens even now in Switzerland again, comes popping up now more and more. And of course ransomware arrive at Switzerland. Then a new threat or risk in my view is the whole cloud topic, which we see more and more. It's again the human part of it, the misconfiguration. With a cloud environment, when you made a mistake, it could happen that you potentially leak all your sensitive data already outside to the internet. And that is not something that you want. I see here an increase in the amount of these incidents. Then more and more the supply chain, that the attacker will not attack the main target directly. Therefore, they're looking for a weaker point in the chain and they are attacking one of your suppliers at the end. That happens as well here at 6. And of course, malware, which come close to ransomware, is a subcategory of ransomware and malware. We get a lot of Trojans and malware receiving. It's a combination with social engineering again, via attachment. Because any bank who has run an e-banking portal will receive this email still, or the customer of the banks. Here I took out just a real-life example. What happens at 6? We had an ATM. We are running the ATMs for Switzerland, and one of our suppliers here gets hit by ransomware. And therefore, you can imagine that was also an issue for us. We already have to think about which countermeasures we've taken against to protect ourselves and our customers from that ransomware incident. And you can imagine communication is also a challenge during that incident because our supplier was not able to communicate anymore because the email servers and the phones or the VoIP communication was also compromised. Therefore, think about also that. That's a challenge as well. Then let's take a deeper look what we see, observe with targeted financial entities in Switzerland. Here, of course, we have number one again. It's phishing, named ransomware and malware as well. And as the previous, we hear from the FINMA, they come to the same conclusion. I saw the reporting. Good that we have the same results. And at the end, what we see behind is always they are financially motivated, of course, because there's some money to steal. That's the conclusion here. And also to highlight again the DDoS attacks that increasing since this summer. When we look in the European Union area, we find the same patterns again. It's malware, most common web-based attacks, and phishing. And more we see all these attack vectors are combined together. They're starting with the phishing email, but at the end they want to deploy malware in your environment. Therefore, as well in the European Union, these countries as well replied phishing, identity theft, ransomware, web-based attacks. And what we see, the attackers are getting faster, more sophisticated, more targeted, and widespread, and more undetected. That worries me. And as I told already, the monetization behind, that's the main motivation. I put it here, a ranking, which attack methods we observed. You see overall the globe, the picture looks quietly the same. And why is that so? Because it's so easy. You don't need really much money. Less know-how is also okay. That is a picture. I like the picture because it shows a price list from the dark web, where you can buy crime as a service already. When you see the amounts here, what an attack costs, it's nothing. And you can multiply it multiple times. And for example, the DDoS, more than 24 hours, about $1,000 US, that's nothing. When you rethink, when you blackmail a company, but they maybe pay back, then it's nothing what you invest here. And it's a whole support model behind already. You can also receive a support like an SLA when something doesn't work, your DDoS attack not works as designed. You have a hotline to call up. They will support you. That's fact, it's a big business. Here, I like this graphic because that shows the situation about new registered domain names, web addresses in the time of Corona starting in March. Here we see new registered addresses per day, which contains COVID or coronavirus in the URL name, .ch, .com, worldwide. And you should take a look at the red line. The red line means they have a high confidence risk score that behind that URLs is a cyber crime. They want to start already. And when you see the numbers, it's in March, it happens. And we have sometimes 5,000 new URLs registered per day with corona and coronaviruses. And when you see the red line, they started an attack at somebody. Mostly of them are phishing attacks or fake websites with coronaviruses maps. And when you visiting that web page, you also receive a little piece of malware. And it's undetected by the user. So my conclusion here, the key findings, what we saw. It's an increase overall worldwide of the cyber attacks, also because of COVID. There was a game changer, speed up things. The attacks move a little bit also to the remote working areas, VPNs, and also all the telco video conferencing systems tools. Then the cloud brings new challenges with it, especially for us financial institution. Then worldwide we see a similarity of all the attack methods, ransomware, phishing, malware, and some extend also the supply chain attack. And important also for me, it's regardless how big the institution, the company are, and where they are located. Then the most frequent observed attack methods generally the same, as I mentioned. Here I summarize it again. And especially the Swiss financial sector continues, luckily, a very low number of attacks. I hope FINMA can then confirm that when the report comes out. We are on the lucky side, but that can change immediately. We're not seeing the same amount of attacks against us here in Switzerland. Then here I put out some number from the US that globally cybercrime damages are expecting to reach more than 6 trillion by next year. It's amazing. They are already over the drug market and everything else. They are now really number one. And again, regardless of the size of an organization in Switzerland, the rapid changes caused by the digitalization and the corresponding need and rapidly adopt IT architecture are viewed as a greatest challenge to maintaining cybersecurity. So, and with that should show what is our greatest attacks methods at the moment at 6. And with that, I want to say thank you for your time, and I want to hand over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Daniel, thank you very much. Great insights. And it's shocking on one hand, and I think it's also striking that cybercrime also is kind of a real business case, meanwhile, with a good business sense, hearing what they've done with the COVID. So as a next speaker, I'm really happy to introduce you to Neal Pollard. Not only a warm welcome to the event, also a very warm welcome to Switzerland. He's the Group Chief Information Security Officer at UBS. He also has an impressive academic career as a professor at Columbia University, Georgetown University, and Fordham School of Law. Prior to this engagement at UBS, he was a partner at EY, where he led the cybersecurity consulting services. And before this, he was an intelligence officer in the US counterterrorism community. He has some side roles as a board of director of the Cyber Conflict Studies Association, as a senior non-resident fellow of the Atlantic Council Cyber Statecraft Initiative, and a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. He started his impressive career with education at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland and the Georgetown University Law Center. He will give us more insights on best practices, what an institution can do, and just for everyone who's online, you cannot ask questions at this stage. We will have at the end of all the presentation a Q&A. So Neal, the stage is yours. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to be here with you, and hello to everyone online. I wanted to share some thoughts from my thoughts will be mainly from the financial services industry, also taken from my current role, but also from my previous role in consulting, where I worked mainly for the financial services industry, but many other industries too. And what are leading practices that industries are adopting in cybersecurity and information security? And most of them, most organizations that I'm familiar with, start with a basic controls catalog. And there are many out there to choose from. There's, we've heard reference to NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a U.S. government agency. They published something for the U.S. government and contractors called the NIST Special Publication 800-53, which is a fairly extensive controls catalog. There are others. There's an ISO standard 27001. There is the Center for Internet Security. They published one that's very well recognized called the 20 Critical Security Controls. All these have one thing in common, is they roll up very detailed implementation guidelines on how to implement best practices. And they all usually share common traits, common elements. Know what hardware and software is on your system. Know what your critical software and hardware assets are. Know what drives your value chain in the digital space. Vulnerability management. We heard a comment earlier about continuous vulnerability management, the importance of that. Access controls. Can you implement need to know and least privilege so that only those with access have it, and those who don't need it don't have the access. Secure configuration of apps, perimeter, any accesses to data, network configurations. Logging and monitoring. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Malware defenses, data protection, including encryption. We heard the importance of that. Boundary defenses, however you define boundaries, whether it's a good old-fashioned perimeter defense or if it's a software-defined boundary and the boundary defense is there. Some less technical and more process-oriented controls are increasingly important. Strong incident response, detection and response to incidents. Red teaming. And penetration testing, vulnerability testing. We've heard the importance of that. I cannot overemphasize the importance of red teaming and facing off against attacker and defender. And then finally, something that was mentioned earlier, which I cannot emphasize enough, which is the importance of education and awareness. Educating not just my staff, your staff, the cybersecurity staff, but the entire staff. We heard earlier mentioned about how the vast majority of attacks start with an email. Start with the phish. That's the first contact of the threat with many companies, is the average user, who probably isn't a cybersecurity specialist, reading an email that was specifically designed to get them to open that for malicious intent. Education and awareness is your first line of defense again. It cannot be your only line of defense, and I just mentioned some other controls that can compensate that and help you build a layered defense approach. But the importance of education and awareness and getting your workforce to be cyber savvy is critical. Oh, by the way, it's not that expensive either. You're talking about training people. You're talking about making them aware and just telling them what you know. If you're a cybersecurity specialist, it's educating people who don't live in your world on what you do know without trying to frighten them too much. These are control catalogs. They reflect best practices. But it's important to understand one size does not fit all. One size doesn't fit one industry, doesn't even fit the participants in that single industry. I would suspect that a large bank probably has more in common in some respects with a large pharmaceutical firm than it does with a small bank in some respects. In other respects, they're both financial services institutes. So it's important to have some framework that helps you guide what's most important, what's right. We're all dealing with limited budgets. We don't have infinite amounts of money, even for education and awareness. So what frameworks are out there that can help make best use of industry-leading practices, captured in control catalogs, and tailor it to your specific circumstances? And I'll go into what those circumstances are, but we've already heard mentioned from Sebastian about one of those, what I think is a very useful framework, which is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. That is not a controls catalog. It captures, it helps you array what those controls can do to help you in identifying what's important, both from a threat and your critical assets, how to protect them, how to detect malicious activity, how to respond, and how to recover. Plus, it's been expanding since it was first introduced in 2014 or so. That framework is useful because it helps you make, it's a mechanism to help you make the cost-benefit decisions of what's right for your firm and prioritize what's most important to spend on first and why. Why is something a priority? How do you make those prioritizations? Now, it starts with that framework that I just mentioned, but you also have to have a method that ties that framework to who gets the most important vote, which is the threat. How do you tie your controls to how the threat will present itself onto your estate? And this means understanding how controls would be effective against threats if they come after you. There are frameworks with that too. There's a popular conceptual methodology, understand and break down the different stages that a threat goes through, and I'm sure my predecessor uses this too, is so-called cyber kill chain, and that sounds very dramatic. Basically what that does is it breaks the more sophisticated threats into what are the steps they go through when they first decide, I'm going to target that institution, and here's how I'm going to do it. They don't miracle themselves onto your network. They have to go through a certain number of steps and use tactics, techniques, and procedures to get there. So the cybersecurity kill chain it's a pretty old concept, well, 10 years old, where it breaks it down into stages. First, they conduct reconnaissance on your network. Then they figure out how to pair up malware that will give them access to a vulnerability that they can exploit to get that malware in there. It's called weaponization. They figure out how to deliver it. As we heard, a popular delivery mechanism is the spear phishing email. Then they exploit their access. They install whatever it is that's going to give them persistent access. Then they start looking around. They have access. They can, if you haven't stopped them by now. And then finally, they try to achieve whatever it is they came for, whether it's denial of service or ransomware or stealing data or whatever it is. For each one of those steps, they have to use certain tactics, techniques, and procedures. There are frameworks that help you understand an array. This is how the adversary is going to come after us, and these are the controls that would help block them at each one of those steps. And here we have a lot of controls for any given step. Here's where we don't have as many. One popular framework that breaks this kill chain down is called the MITRE ATT&CK framework. MITRE is a scientific research institute in the United States, and they've arrayed that kill chain down to here are all the different ways they can execute that. It sounds a little bit esoteric, but basically when you step back, what that does is it gives you a framework saying, here's how the bad guy operates, here's how we operate. Where can we block and tackle them on every single stage of that? And what gives you that insight, what connects you the threat to the effectiveness of your controls is through some other techniques that we see being increasingly used. Scenario planning. What are we most concerned with? What threats want to attack us? What are the scenarios where they would do the most damage to us? And how would they do that? How does that attack chain look like? That's through threat modeling. This is how the threat would present. These are how the controls are expected to perform against the threat. All of that is fed by another increasingly important industry practice, which is cyber threat intelligence. That's understanding who really is targeting you. How have they targeted institutions like you? What are they more likely to do? How are they changing year on year? And then from that, you can go through threat modeling and understand, and where will we be successful about them, all the way up as far up the kill chain, all the way down to which controls seem to be most effective or seem to intercept most of the attempts on any part of that kill chain. That's where you put your priorities. That's where you understand, here we need to have compensators. Here we need to have really strong defense in depth. Now, that's one important use of cyber threat intelligence, is to measure your effectiveness, not just of the controls, but are your controls not only there, but are they doing what we're assuming they're doing? Are they covering what we're assuming they're covering? But even taking a step back from there, another important role of cyber threat intelligence, another important use, is going back to a broader prioritization issue, which is how is today different than yesterday? How is the threat different than yesterday? Does that change my thinking? Does that change my to-do list for the day? How is my infrastructure different today than it was yesterday? And does the threat cause me to focus more on my infrastructure in a different spot? How are my users different today than they were yesterday? Is there a pocket of my users that seem to be overly targeted through spear phishing campaigns? Third parties. How are they different today than they were yesterday? Do I see, going back to the importance of a primary institution to report even when their third parties are hit because they have impact on you? Is there an adversary drawing concentric circles around us through our third parties that may have access to infrastructure or access to data? That is a very, very important use of cyber threat intelligence. And these are the domains where you should understand and generate these insights into, am I doing what I should be doing? Am I making the right priorities? Now, what you do with that insight, those are less formalized industry practices. This is what you derive, this is what I derive from talking to my peers in industry. This is what I derive from going to conferences like this and talking to my colleagues, which is how do we do this as a cyber security community? How do we do this as the cadre of professionals in any given institution? And especially, how do we bring on our critical partners, which is the rest of the institution? Because we don't operate in a vacuum. We are important partners in this. Rule number one, I would say, is simplify. Just make it as simple as possible. Complexity by itself is not necessarily a bad thing. There are good aspects and bad aspects to complexity, like so many other things. But simplification helps when you're presenting and engaging the business. And I need to do that. I need to understand what's important to the business. Not only what's important from their assets that are most deserved of protection, but what are they trying to accomplish? What are your business objectives? Because I don't want to just tell you no. I want to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish as a business, which is the reason why our firm exists, but to do so in a secure manner that also lives up to our clients' expectations. So that's an important thing to consider. I would say even more important to that is understand the threat is human. I've talked about this a little bit. The threat is a bunch of human beings that are trying to use ingenuity to figure out a way around your defenses. It's not a technology failing. It is human beings that wish ill upon you or your data or your clients or whatever it is they're trying to achieve. So plan accordingly on that one. Data is your friend. Collecting as much data as you can within reason. It does become an analytics challenge, but if you can instrument and put sensors in your perimeter, your network, your hosts, your applications, your users, your sensitive data, so that you can use that and understand, again, why is today different than yesterday? Is something behaving oddly that causes us to take a look and say, what is that anomaly? Nothing to see here, or there is something worth investigating. Staff is a critical capability. And if there, as a CISO, I would encourage you, certainly hire plenty of technologists on your staff, operators, people from an operational world who have a different perspective on getting things done than technologists. Risk and compliance experts are absolutely critical. Auditors, lawyers, and even a few diplomats will help on the CISO staff as well. A lot of this doesn't come down to do you have the right controls. A lot of it comes down to what are my priorities? Why is today different than yesterday? And what is more important today than it was yesterday? Controls will help you with that. Frameworks will help you understand that at a technical level. Talking to the business, understanding client expectations, that will help as well. But sometimes it's worthwhile just taking a look at what's written on the lobby wall of your company. Most companies have written on their lobby wall some statement of their value, of what their values are and their mission. That's helpful for my job too. What are the client's expectations? That's usually captured in the values. And sometimes if you have no other mechanism to figure out, do I go left or right on this particular step, just take a step back and understand what are the values of the company, what are the client expectations. That's helpful for understanding our priorities. That's also helpful because of the contribution it makes to culture. Culture is a powerful capability. And this is what I want to end with, which is, again, the role of education and awareness and how it's more than just, here's your annual compliance training. I hope you remember that until next year. It's building a culture of awareness. It's building a cybersecurity workforce. Going back to staff, yes, I need to hire a cybersecurity workforce. I want to generate a cyber secure workforce too. I want to enlist every single user in our firm to be a partner in this with me. Education awareness will get you there, but not education awareness for the fulfillment of an annual compliance training test. It's education awareness that affects the culture that then I can use as a capability so that they understand if something seems off, it probably is off. See something, say something as a culture so that they understand the client expectations are not only what value they're delivering, but also that they're delivering that value securely and they can preserve and extend that value through cybersecurity, the digital value. And if I want them to see something, say something, I got to tell them what to look for, and I got to tell them who to call if they see it. But again, I just moved from New York City. See something, say something works well in New York City. It works well for helping build a culture of awareness and a culture of partnership with cybersecurity. And that all comes down to the user. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Neal, for the insights. I was kind of a little bit of a shiver when you talked about this cyber kill chain. But anyway, it's you also mentioned that people is key. I think we knew this. So those who are in charge for education, what we are going to say tonight will be broadcasted and will be accessible through a link. And also it's great to hear actually, Neal, that there are kind of frameworks in place that give you guidance to navigate through that difficult environment. As a next highlight, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce you to Olivier Scaillet. He's a professor of probability and statistics at the University of Geneva and a senior chair at the Swiss Finance Institute. He holds a master and a PhD from the University of Paris in applied mathematics, and his research expertise is in the area of derivative pricing, econometric theory, and econometrics applied to finance and insurances. He has been one of the winners of the biannual award for the best paper published in the Journal of Empirical Finance on the topic of quantitative risk management and of the Banque Privée Espírito Santo Award Prize on the topic of mutual fund performance. He's also an elected fellow of the Society of Financial Econometrics. And he's going to give us a research result on how creative bitcoins can be handled or not. So this is a really great topic and looking forward to the contribution. Thank you, Olivier.
Thank you, Sandro, for this very nice introduction. Indeed, I will speak about a topic which is, I think, very topical for this cybersecurity event, which is Bitcoin manipulation and wash trading. So it will be related to some of the other talk of tonight. Okay, so the first topic I will speak about two research papers. So the first one is a joint work with Andrea Treccani and Christopher Trevisan. It's published in the Journal of Financial Econometrics. And what we try to do is to investigate flash crashes and whether we have indeed ample evidence of Bitcoin manipulation. The second one is still ongoing research with Sean Foley from the University of Sydney and two students, Gaëtan Bakali and William Krekel, and this is very recent work on wash trading, which is of course related to money laundering. Okay, and I will show you that there is indeed empirical evidence of wash trading in the data. Okay, so I will talk a lot about data tonight. Okay, so flash crashes manipulation. So if you remember the first movie Wall Street, you remember that you had that young trader Padawan who was trying to exploit insider information to make money and to in order to manipulate the market. Okay, so the goal of this talk is to show you that you also have that type of evidence when you look at Bitcoin. Okay, so what we try to do is to achieve a systematic study of the jump in the Bitcoin market. So what is the motivation? Well, presence of jumps are still an open question. For example, we know that if you look at intraday data on equity, there is no evidence of jumps. Okay, it of course has important implications for asset pricing, for risk management, for portfolio allocation, because jumps are related to what is called extreme risk. Okay, so this is a bit the idea. Okay. So why Bitcoin? Basically, because we have a low liquidity. So there is no official market makers in the market. So it means that you can easily manipulate, and this is what I will show you. So you have the importance of where they will try to manipulate the market. Okay. So there is, of course, a high volatility, so much higher than on equity market or bond market, and it's crash prone. So why is it crash prone? Because you have no circuit breakers. Okay, so if the market is going down or going up, then you will observe a very large jump. Okay, it's completely unregulated, so there is no central bank. So you don't have a type of policy guy who will be around. So in the previous talk, there were, of course, mentioning the data is key, and as an econometrician, of course, data is really key. And what we have had is we had access to transaction level data. Okay, so it will be second per second level data with the trader identification, so the digital ID, and whether the trade was buy or sell initiated. Okay, and I will show you a little bit later on more results about that. Okay, so Bitcoin, also you know that it's essentially based on the blockchain. So the blockchain is a decentralized accounting ledger. So you don't have a central authority. It's a democratic network. You have some deflationary aspect as well. Okay. So what is interesting is that if the key difficulty when you look at that type of payment system is whether you have centralizing or decentralized market. Okay. So and what you want to avoid is what is called the usual double spending solution. When you buy some Bitcoin, you want to be sure that the guy to whom you are buying have not sold meanwhile to another guy. So this is the double spending problem. Okay. And again, also if you look at the second movie in Wall Street, you recognize the person who gives the money and who is in fact centralizing the information, and this is a centralized way to do the to handle the payment system. Now you have another stuff which is called the distributed or decentralized type of market, and this is exactly what you have in the Bitcoin. In fact, it's very old. Okay, so if you go to Micronesia, you will see a very nice island which is called Yap. And you have the coin stone, okay? And in fact, the coin stone, as you can see, it's a very big stone, so you cannot just grab it and throw it to your new owner, okay? So in fact, the stone will stand still, but what will circulate is the information about the ownership, okay? And this is the coin stone system. So if you are interested, there is a very interesting paper by Milton Friedman, who happens to be a Nobel Prize in Economics, where he explained the coin system, okay? The coin stone system of Yap. Okay, so in fact it's quite old. So what is the coin stone system? So there is indeed no central authority. There is a group consensus over ownership, okay? And of course, in case of conflicts, if you are the owner and there is somebody who, in fact, tells you that he's not the owner, you can always punch the guy, okay, in order to claim your stone back, okay? Of course, it will get very costly if you have a lot of users. Imagine the number of stone that we have to pile up. So it will be impossible. Okay. So the key characteristic here in a decentralized market is that public memory about ownership and then not the physical location. So to make the parallel with the Bitcoin system is what is the public memory? The public memory is simply the blockchain. Okay. So the blockchain plays that role. Okay. So now let me go to the data. Okay, so it's related to the event cybersecurity because as a professor we were beneficial from, in fact, a hack. Okay, and what was that hack? That hack was the hack of the Mt. Gox trading database. So Mt. Gox was an exchange who went bankrupt and a lot of Bitcoins were lost. Okay, so as a retaliation act, hackers, in fact, hacked the database of Mt. Gox and released it on the internet. Okay, and of course, as a professor, you are very happy with that because, in fact, you have access to data which are very interesting. Okay, so why are they interesting? It's quite simply to see. Okay, so what is the information that we have? We have the timestamp. Okay, we know exactly when the trade happens. Okay, at the level of the second. Okay, we have the trade ID. We have the user ID, of course, the digital ID. We don't know the name of the trader, but we can identify which trader is trading with whom. And what was really interesting is that we had also the information about whether the trade was initially was initiated by a buy or a sell. So we can see that whether you have indeed some traders which are pushing in one direction. Okay, and this is why I will be able to show you the evidence of Bitcoin manipulation. Okay, so as you can see, we have really a lot of transaction. We have 6.4 million transaction data. So it's and we have close to 90,000 identify unique traders. Okay, so it's a massive database that we can use. Okay, so do we have presence of jumps? Look at the graph. Okay, obviously this is a very nice jump, and what is interesting, and I will show you graph later on as well, is that in fact it's related to what we call manipulation. Okay, so what you will see is that you have one or two big traders that will try to push the market in one direction in order to introduce a massive a problem in the order flow and a massive imbalance in the order flow between the buy side and the sell side. Okay, and this will in fact move the market in one direction. Okay. So what is interesting as well, and we were a little bit surprised by that when you are used to work with equity data, you know that when you look at equity data, so jumps are typically down jumps, so it's crashes. In fact, in the Bitcoin market, it's the reverse. So you have more surges in the market, so very straight up move than down moves. And you can see indeed on the mean. You can also see that in fact on the histogram, okay, so this is the distribution of the jump, and you can see that on the right tail you have extremely high jump, up to 35% a day, 35% a day, or also massive crashes like 15% in one day. Okay, so you can see that there is a lot of volatility, a lot of movement in the market. Okay, you can view that as a wild west, and this is why it's interesting to look at that from an econometrics point of view, because you can really observe whether so you can manipulate that type of market. Number of jumps, you can see that there is a lot of jumps per day. Okay, so it's not just a rare event. We have also evidence of clustering of jumps. So if you look at the red line, so this corresponds to days where you observe all jumps. So it means that if you have clustering, it means that indeed you have people who try to manipulate the market. Okay, because you will see jump, and then nothing, and then again jump, and nothing. Okay, so people really try to exploit and try to make jumps happen, and this is what we observe in the data. Okay, so this is my favorite graph. Okay, so look at the graph on the left. So this is how we. So what do you have? 0 is in fact the time of the jump, and we look at what is happening before, 5 minutes or 10 minutes before, and what is happening after 5 minutes or 10 minutes after. So around the jump, what is going on in the market. And in the first graph, you see what we have done is build a whale index. So what is a whale? A whale in the jargon of the Bitcoin fund manager is a big guy. Okay, so it will be a massive trader. And the whale index, in fact, it's very simple to build. You look at the number of passive traders, and you report to the ratio of the active trader. Okay, so it means that when that index is very high, it means that you have a lot of passive guys, which are small, and just one guy who will try to massively act and introduce a jump by just one big move in the market. Okay. And so you can see on the slide that indeed, so just before the crash, you see that the index is very high. So this is really evidence that you have some people who trade strategically in the market in order to exploit the illiquidity. Okay, you can also view that on the bid-ask spread, which is the difference between the price at which you can buy and the price at which you can sell. If you have indeed a huge bid-ask spread, it means that you have a dislocation in the market, and you have indeed a lot of imbalance in the order flow. Okay, and this is what we also have on that right slide here, where you can see that the order flow imbalance is very big. So the difference between the buy side and the sell side is massive. Okay, so now a question, of course, that we can ask is, do we care about those jumps? Okay, and in fact, you do care, even if you are not trading on an intraday basis. Why? And this is, I think, again, this is very simple. When you speak about flash crashes, typically what you observe is down and up, but you go back at the same level. Okay, so you have a temporary effect of the flash crash. On the Bitcoin market, in fact, you have a persistent effect. Okay, so when in fact you are going up, you have a crash, and when you go back, in fact, you go back, but not at the same level. And this is exactly what you can show, what you can see on the left panel. Okay, you see that you have a down move, After the jump, you go back, okay, but not as much, okay? And vice versa, if you have the reverse, also, so it means that you have a persistent change. Okay, so still have 3 minutes, I guess. So now the next topic, which is ongoing research, and which is related to money laundering, is wash trading. Okay, so do we have empirical evidence, or is it simply a folklore that you hear when people discuss about wash trading? Okay, so again, data. Okay, so as I told you, data important for an econometrician. So the data set comprises transaction level data. Again, it will be high frequency data. So we have the whole picture of the trades on the exchange. So here we look at 6 decentralized exchanges, and we have also one centralized exchange, which is Binance. Okay, so we have really a lot of information. When I see a lot of information, look at the numbers. We have 400 million transactions. Okay, so it's really a massive data set where we can investigate this evidence of wash trading. Okay, so the base currency here will be Ether, which is one crypto. Okay, so this is a graph that I like a lot. So in order to classify the traders, okay, so what do we have at the bottom? We have a number of different coins which are traded. Okay, so if you are on the left, it means that you, as a trader, you will only trade 1 or 2 coins. If you are on the right, you will trade a lot of different coins. Okay, and on the axis, you have in fact the volume. Okay, so why to show you that? It's because you can identify 3 classes of traders. Okay, so the one which are there, which is group 1, the one here which is group 2, and the last one which is group 3. Okay, so what are those traders? Okay, so group 1, if you look at what you have, group 1 is simply exactly the guy that we want to look at. They are the wash traders. Okay, so it's agents who trade a small number of coins, but with very large volumes. Okay, group 2 are the market makers. Okay, so those agents will trade tens of thousands of transactions, but with large overall volumes. Okay, this is group 2. And group 3, if you remember, they trade a lot of different coins, but with small volumes. So these are the arbitrageurs. Okay, so they are the agents who trade many different coins with low trading volume. Okay, so the group that you are of course interested in that paper is the wash traders. Okay, so do we see trading evidence of wash trading? Yes, we do. Okay, so look at, we have in fact 2 agents. Okay, we have agent A and we have agent B, and we have the inventory of agent A in Ether, the inventory of agent B in Ether, and the same in RAM. Okay, so what we have observed with those traders, that they only trade between them, nobody else. Okay, so A trade always with B and only on one coin, which is here, the RAM. Okay, and if you look at the picture, also these are the inventories, you can see that in fact the picture are mirror image. Okay, so when I buy to you, it's exactly the same as a sell. Okay, and the inventory are really the same. Okay, so this is an example of wash trading because you don't trade with anybody else, but just one counterparty all the time. And the position are exactly the same on the two sides. Okay. So this is what we have at the moment as evidence of wash trading, and we think that, of course, it's related to money laundering, because it's really strange that as a person you only trade with your best friend. Okay, so this is my talk. Thank you very much.
Olivier, thank you very much. This was really interesting, and now I know why my Bitcoin investment didn't really work out so well. So, as you can see, we started from regulation into hot topics, and then into best practices, and now we started with a real case, and we will continue with real cases. So it's really great to have you here and see you again, Ivano, and to introduce you to our audience. So Ivano Somaini, is the regional manager at Compass Security in Zurich, where he works since March 2011. In 2013, he formed Compass Security, his branch office in Bern, which he managed until 2017. Now he leads a new branch office in Zurich. In 2015, Ivano was trained as an advanced social engineer by Christopher Hadnagy, I'm supposed to know, one of the world's best social engineers. 1 year later, followed further training in the field of open source intelligence with Mike Basel, the former FBI undercover agent and recognized OSINT expert. He holds a master in information security at the ETH Zurich, and he will show us how you can hack Swiss banks. And of course, Ivan is a good guy, not a bad guy, so he's mandated by those banks. And I'm really looking forward to hear the war stories from the field. Ivano.
So thank you a lot for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here today. My name is Ivano Somaini. I came from a really small village in Graubünden, in Canton Graubünden. To be precise, from the south of Graubünden. I'm a so-called Steinbock-Chinkeli. And as a Steinbock-Chinkeli, I had a huge chance. With 16, I could choose if I wanted to go in the high school in Bellinzona or in Chur. Because I didn't speak any word of German, I chose to go to Chur. And in Chur, I found my first big passion, and this was acting. I was an amateur actor 4 years long. I wasn't that good, but it was really fun. And at the end of this experience, I tried to go a step further, and I came here in Zurich when I found my second big passion, and this was IT security at the ETH. As you probably know, the ETH is a very theoretic school, and I also specialized myself in a very theoretic topics of information security. You have to know that the title of my master thesis was the formal verification of cryptographic protocol. It sounds pretty boring. I can assure you it was extremely boring. And at the end of this experience, I thought I have to find a way to match these two passions, acting and IT security. But as you can imagine, it's not the easiest combination that you are looking for, but that I found a job that will make it possible. And this is the social engineer or the ethical hacker. This means in the last 10 years, I was hired to break physically and digitally into banks, maybe dressed as a printer technician or as a banker itself, or one time as Santa Claus, for example. And once that I was inside, I had to steal so many information as possible and then explain them how I've done it. But I thought there are really companies do these kind of activities. Then I started looking, like in Google, like social engineering test company from Switzerland. And then I found Compass Security. And I can remember, naive as I am, my first discussion that I had with them, I asked them, do you do some social engineering test? Yes, we do. But what do you actually do? Yes, we send some phishing email, we look if people click on it, and we do some statistics. Yes, but you don't try to break in physically and dress as a technician and so on and try to steal information. Yes, we don't too much because, our employees, they are introvert, they are informatician. Then I said, okay, can I try to do it? Yes, of course, and from this moment I was hired. This means from this moment I started to break into banks, mostly, and I thought that today I will tell you the first time that I was hired to break into a bank. It was about 9.5 years ago. It was a bank, private bank here in Zurich. And like all the test works, they just contact us and ask, is it possible to break into the banks and then steal some salary information about the employees? And I said, okay, we can try. And as any social engineering test, you start with an information gathering phase. This means we started to look at their web page, are their social media presence, and also physically, we were outside of the building looking where people go to eat, go in, if they have some delivery service, if they had some work outside. And after a few days, we noticed some pattern, recurring pattern, that practically every day between 7 and 7:30 in the morning, one woman, a coffee delivery service, let's say, with a car, had access to the garage. She just parked it inside. She just loaded out all the coffee beans. And then she had also a badge to open the banks, the door of the banks. And then she went into the building and started to fill all the coffee machine. I thought, probably this is a good starting point because this woman will not know all the employees and maybe she will not ask me if I'm allowed to be there. Now, instead of telling you how it went, I will show you the video of the video camera of these banks of the garage. I can show you the video because these banks doesn't exist anymore, not because of this test, but then I can show actually how easy it is to break into a private bank. So let's switch it. So you have to imagine I'm outside of the bank since 1 hour waiting that this woman will come by. And fortunately, also those days, she came to bring the coffee beans. And I was dressed like a banker, and I brought with me a heavy box. Why a heavy box? This is pretty easy, because probably she saw that I have some difficulties to open the door, and she will help me. I also have just some random badge that normally is just something that looks white. It's more than enough. And I just acted as I was having a very animated conversation, actually with myself, and this happens a lot in my life. So now I will show how it works. You see, this is 2011 and 7:22 in the morning. Let's start it. So 7:22, the garage door, it's open. And I'm really happy, and on the other side of the street, I know now I have about 15 to 20 seconds to enter this garage. And after some seconds, the guy here, it's me. The first thing that I do, I just go near the other machine here, the other car, so that the woman that saw me from the first time, she thinks that I was already in the garage and I'm just unloading my car. Here you see the badge, and I'm acting just in a very animated conversation. And as an Italian-speaking guy, it's not too difficult to do that. Then I started to go, my first try to go into the door, but I see that the woman was actually not paying attention to me. Then I need some excuse, and I've done so. I've forgot something in the car, and I had to unload it even more stuff. Then after a few minutes, I noticed she pays me attention. She goes and she saw that in one hand I had the heavy box, in the other hand the phone, but actually I have the badge. Then she used her badge to open the door, and after exactly 3 minutes, I'm inside into the banks. I can assure you that is a very, very strange feeling the first time that you break into the banks, also the second times, but because you have no idea where you are going to see, where maybe some security guards, maybe another door that you need a badge. This is the reason why the first thing that I try to do normally is just to hide myself. In this case, you see, I just push a button for the elevator and then I disappeared on the first floor. So this was my first attack. And from this day on, I thought maybe it was just a lucky punch that it was that easy, because we always start to model some attacks like Ocean's 11, like you come from this side and then you call me on this and we try to do this. But most of the time in the last 10 years, it was really, really sometimes ridiculously easy. Just I'm the guy who is going to repair your air conditioner and then just get you the badge. And also, one wrong thing, a lot of people think that as a social engineer, you always have to look confident. This is wrong. You have to look like yourself. For example, I know that I don't look really authoritarian, like that I have not so much authority. I look more than a guy that needs help. This is the reason why they just bring a box with me and the people let me in. So this was my first attack. The second one, it's like we heard in the previous talks, many times actually, it's phishing is like the weapon number one. And for us, social engineer, phishing is really, really boring because it always works. Like you can write a very, very bad phish, but you will always find someone that is curious and will click on it. This was the reason that we tried to do something new, and we modeled a phishing attack based on another attack that it's called baiting. And baiting is the attack that's, for example, if I go in a banks, for example, I bring with me 10 malicious infected USB sticks, and I start to just drop it around near the coffee machine, near the toilet. Normally, 8 out of 10, they just been collected, inserted, and executed. But if you write confidential on it, then are 10 out of 10 normally, or sometimes even 12 out of 10. No idea how that works, but people then bring this at home or they share with other colleagues and so on. And then I wanted to model these phishing attacks with the same idea to generate curiosity in these bank employees. And I came up with the idea to create a so-called bonus calculator, because these banks has actually like anniversary years, like they had their 60th anniversary. And then I thought, how can I motivate bank employees to click on a link? Yes, they get more bonus this year. So I impersonated the chief financial officer of these banks, and I just wrote an email from him apparently to the CEO, talking to him, saying, the attached Excel file is a bonus calculator. You just have to insert your name, and it will output how much money that you will get in bonus this year. But I just acted as I misspelled the people that I will send, and I'll send not only to the CEO, but to all the employees of this bank. You can imagine that most of the people were really, really interested to open these files and click on it and see how much money they will get, how much money the colleague will get, or the CEO will get, and to even do the situation even worse, I sent 5 minutes later another email telling them, please delete everything, it's highly confidential, so that you are sure that all the resting people also click on it. This was, at Compass Security, the most, effective or successful phishing attack that we ever done. We had 85% click rate on 250 people. You can imagine in a real case scenario, we just infected people from the management board to the IT support to all the company. And in the last year, I noticed that banks and insurance, they are probably one of the first sector that started to invest in IT security awareness, and so on. And they are a pretty tough adversary if you try to attack them on a technical level, because they have a lot of very good solution, software and protection, and that's it. But what I also noticed that after a few years in this role, it already during the first meeting that I had with them, just how they talked to each other, how they was related to each other, the culture that you could breathe during this meeting, you could already imagine how many vulnerability you will find at the end of this assessment. And this was because you need, like we heard in the previous talk, like a culture that empower the employees to do the right things and tell them what they have to do, to train them and so on. And one thing that normally I don't really like, it's like when you hear sentences like, there is no patch for human stupidity. I think this is really a bad attitude, because humans are not stupid, humans are just human. It's for us as a company to build a culture that will allow to make mistakes, but at the same time just to tell them I've done these mistakes. This means for me, nowadays it's not the human the weakest link, but it's the company culture the weakest link. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Ivano, very much for these insights. I think I'm going to stop mailing, and that's maybe the safest thing. But now we had very concrete, real examples how cybercrime is really affecting all of us. And now we get even more into a real case. And I think it's very brave that you're here, Andreas, that you tell us the story, that we can learn from you. And as Ivano, you said, it's a culture, so mistakes, everyone does it. We have to be open with mistakes and learn from mistakes, and that's why I think it's really great you're here, Andreas. Let me introduce you. Andreas Plüer. He's the head of Digital Services EKT AG and a member of the management board. His career started from the pharmaceutical company Roche to the SAP consulting firm Advanis, where he worked as a consultant to the mechanical engineering company Diamond Technology, as a CEO where he was in charge of IT. He was also founder and in the management at Etanova, an interdisciplinary consulting company in the field of energy efficiency. Most recently, he worked for the building service company Meyer Tobler as CIO and member of the extended management board. He studied information management at the University of St. Gallen, and he will tell us now what it really means if you're hacked and what goes up in the company, in their minds. So really great that you're here, and I'm looking forward to your contribution. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Sandro, for the introduction. Yes, the attack I'm going to talk about happened at Walter Meyer, so where I worked as a CIO, and it had nothing to do with EKT, and I want to mention as well the fact that my change of jobs had nothing to do with the cyber attack. I left in very good terms. So you can imagine it's not most fun of all times to be standing here on the stage and talk about how my whole IT went to pieces in July last year. But we have to see that a lot of attacks like that have happened over the last few months. And some go public on the media, but others do not. And I think most of the attacks stay under the radar. And this is wrong. We should talk about it. However embarrassing this is, I think we should share that information with other companies, because yes, it is an attack on a company, but the number and the severity of the attacks, they suggest that this is as well an attack on our national economy. And that's why I think it's important to share the information, and I want to give you an insight. So every story has a history, and so does mine. And mine started back in 2017 when the two companies, Walter Meyer and Tobler Building Technologies, decided to merge. And especially for the IT department I was responsible for, that was a very stressful time. It was 2 years of heavy work to integrate two independent IT systems, to integrate two SAP systems into one. And whoever has done that before knows that 9 months to get two SAP systems together, that's a heavy job. And so IT security, cybersecurity was not on the top priority list. And yes, we managed to get the job done, and that was the most important thing of all. And last Easter 2019, we went live. The whole IT department, however, was exhausted, and we really needed a break to recuperate, and so did I. I took 2 months off. I took my family and went to Hawaii for 4 weeks, and then returned to Switzerland, went to the beautiful Flims Laax area in the Swiss mountains to spend another 4 weeks, which was planned, but that was quickly interrupted by an email that I got on the 24th of July, and it said, if your mobile is on, please call. were infected with the virus. That changed everything so quickly. I called my deputy, and she notified me that the whole company was infected, and all the systems were encrypted with megacortex. All clients, all servers, and all data. Boom. So what were the events after the attack? Well, mainly I was asleep, but my deputy, she was on duty. And the first strange behavior happened to the monitoring systems of the IT outsourcing company. They noticed some confusing general situation. They didn't get any heartbeats anymore of the servers. And they first thought, the monitoring systems are just not working correctly. And it took them more than 2 hours to realize what really had happened. So it was approximately 1:45 till they had proof of the malware outbreak. And then the decision was taken to shut down all systems. The deputy was informed, my deputy, and she called the CFO immediately, and the status major incident was declared. They desperately tried to recover the systems, to restore the systems, to remove the malware, but they didn't manage. And in the morning at around 5 o'clock, they had to say, sorry, there's going to be no operations today. At 6 o'clock, the CFO briefed the executive board, and 45 minutes later, the crisis team was in charge. They went to the war room. That was around the time when I read the message, and I immediately packed my bags and drove to Schwarzenbach. And at around 9 o'clock, I was there. We did the first situation assessment in the crisis team, and we figured out that the most crucial processes, the customer-facing processes, had to be established as soon as possible, because otherwise the company would be dead. And if you're in a situation like that, that's a hell of a responsibility. So in the morning, the CEO, the CFO, and myself, we determined which ones were the most crucial processes. We focused on those, and we set the priorities. And after around 3 hours, the damage pattern was established. I called the cybersecurity experts to help us, and they were immediately on their way to help us. And at 1 o'clock, the prioritization of the task were established, and the recovery measures started. So it was certainly a task for the crisis management, and it was really a battle against time, because we knew if we don't get the main core processes up in the next few days, the company would be dead. And so, yes, the very first day after the attack, no systems were running. And if you look at that graph, you have the operational level in percent, and it was 0. We had no telephone, no email, no website, no internal system, nothing. And so the first task we did was get the telephone system back up and running, which we managed. And as well, on all the endpoints still available, because we had some Linux system and other systems that were not switched on at the time, we put endpoint protection on to make sure we could contain the systems and keep the attackers from being inside, to shut them out. Thanks to the fact that SAP was running on Linux, we managed to get SAP up very quickly with 0 data loss. That was crucial. And so we had 20 newly set up clients that we could use, and so SAP could be operated by the experts, but the problem was there were no endpoints. So all users, they were sitting there, they couldn't work. So IT was working as a top priority in setting up completely fresh endpoints, fresh clients that could be distributed to the most crucial users in the company. On the next day 3, the first central warehouse was up, which was an important step to managing the first customer delivery on day 4. That was a day to celebrate, because after 4 days at least, the customer could be served again. And we didn't have much time to celebrate, to be honest, because yes, the problem was still there were no systems available to the employees. The next day, thanks to some great work of the IT department that practically worked day and night, we could deliver the 200 workplaces to the most crucial users in all of Switzerland. And another 3 days later, the second fully automated warehouse was up and running. And by that time, the operational level of the company was probably 80%. But customer-facing processes, all internal processes, all your normal workspace, that was far from normal. And if you look at the graph here, we needed that time because we created a whole new infrastructure. We set up a new domain, we set up new network zones, everything from scratch to make sure that the attackers were no longer inside the new environment. And that took around 4 months to set that up. That was an extremely long time, but because we were operational towards the customer, we could afford that time. That was a very stressful time. And it was a time when crisis management was really in charge. And we knew that we really had to focus in getting back the processes as fast as possible. And the communication strategy that we had was be very open about it. So talk about the attack, inform the media, talk to the clients. And that was not without the concern from internally, because I mean, there is as well a question about your reputational damage. The executive board decided we go outside and we talk about it. And I think that was a very good approach, and we got very positive feedback about that. The internal communications decided as well on the 31st of July to send a camera team into the war room. You might ask yourself why. Well, they wanted to inform the employees because 1,000 employees worked with outside the headquarters, and they wanted to show them what's happening, what people are doing to recover the systems. And at that time, I thought, well, that's probably one of the most stupid ideas, to send a camera team while you're sweating and you're desperately trying to get the systems back up. But now looking back, it was a historic document because it shows live what happened in the war room. And I want to show you that quick video clip. It's in Swiss German, but I've got subtitles in English.
Morgen miteinander, Schwarzebach.
Morgen. Morgen, Schwarzebach. Guten Morgen, alles Aufregen.
Morgen.
Morgen.
Wir kommen zu Traktandum 2, Update Nebicon. Ich übergebe das Wort an Christian.
Nach dem ersten Schock, den man hat, bei so einer Attacke, muss man sich recht schnell fassen und muss klare Gedanken haben, wie man aus dieser Situation rauskommt. Wir sind so organisiert, dass wir jeden Tag 4 Status-Updates haben. Die Status-Updates finden hier innen statt. Das Ziel ist, dass wir Tagesziel definieren und dass die externen Partner und Mitarbeitenden, die nicht vor Ort sind, informiert werden, was wir erreichen wollen und wie wir es erreichen wollen.
Vom Zusammenführen von den beiden Firmen noch nicht gerade top aufgestellt und jetzt noch die Kühle, das war sehr hart gewesen. Und ich wünsche das wirklich keiner Firma, dass das auch erleben müssen, was wir jetzt da noch durchmachen müssen.
Ich glaube, es hat uns auch recht zusammengeschweißt, jetzt einfach das Ganze, dass wir miteinander arbeiten, dass wir miteinander irgendwie da durch müssen, miteinander die Informationen austauschen, die wir haben, ja, dass wir da vorwärts kommen.
Was für mich gut ist, ist zu sehen, wie viele Leute mithelfen, wie viele gute Ideen jetzt kommen, so dass wir jetzt möglichst schnell wieder in einen geordneten Betrieb hineinkommen.
It still gives me the shivers when I see the actual video because it was really live. It was not Hollywood, it was something that really happened. So how did the hackers succeed? Well, thinking back about what I heard from lots of the presenters beforehand, it was exactly the same that happened to us. And thanks to InfoGuard, who supported us from the very first day in the investigation process, we found out that there were actually 2 hacker groups involved. And the first hacker group, they used Emoted with an email and attachment to come in and target our employees. The end user clicked on the warning button, and like that, Emoted was loaded from the command and control center and infected the machine. And with that first foothold and vulnerability, that was traded on the darknet, and the second more competent attacker group took over, and yes, they installed Cobalt Strike, and they used that for lateral movement and for privilege escalation to get to the domain controller, and from there start to distribute and execute Megacortex to encrypt all data, all servers and all clients that were Windows-based. So yes, it was unfortunately pretty much what the previous guys already said, and that happened to us as well. Now, what are the insights and consequences? I think I'm repeating as well some of the main topics, but to me it was really new that organized crime operates in a division of labor, so that there are some large-scale opportunistic attacks by groups that exploit vulnerabilities and then pass it on to very capable organizations for the targeted attacks. Myotopolo had, I would say, normally industry-graded perimeter security measures in place. We had firewalls, we had Windows 10, most recent patches, we had virus checkers, we had spam controls, but we realized that this infrastructure was already outdated. We had to introduce advanced threat protection, we had to harden the workplaces, we had to use two-factor authentications. We had to introduce managed services like endpoint protection and security operations centers that we thought were not necessary for a normal industrial company. But I think this is now a must, because everybody is a target for cyber attacks, from personal computers to critical infrastructures of entire nations. And that was a learning that I had to learn that the hard way during this attack. And I think as well, crisis management exercises is really a very important point, and I can really stress that. Be prepared. Try to use your crisis management organizations to prepare for events like that. Yes, that was my quick story. Thank you very much, and stay safe.
Thank you very much, Andreas. This was really interesting. I know what you must have gone through, and I really hope I never have to do it myself, or anyone who I know that has to go through it. Now we would like to open the panel. So everyone online, you can ask questions now. Thomas Koch from SIX will moderate the Q&A, and all the speakers are still here in the room and would be happy to answer your questions. Thomas Koch, please.
So hello together. My pleasure to be at the board as well. So don't be annoyed if I look at my laptop. I try to find out which new questions will drop in the meantime. We already have a few collection, and I would say I'll start with the very easy ones. There was the question about could you tell something? What does it mean related to cash? You know, and what was it? And the remediation action, you know, to how much cash was finally out, you know, to immediate or long term. Can you distinguish between those actions?
Yes, what I can certainly say is in terms of ransom money, none was paid because we were in a lucky situation that all the backups were stored away. The actual cost, direct cost to recover the systems and for any direct cash out, we're talking about more than 2 million Swiss francs. The indirect costs are tricky to classify, but as well, we're talking about a couple of % of your turnover. So all in all, this is really something that lies in a couple of million Swiss francs, these attacks, not including all the problems that people have, very stressed and all these costs, they're tricky to classify. But we're certainly talking about a couple of million.
Yeah. So the following technical question came as well to your side. So I tried to couple it to concentrate the question. How widespread are backup Linux machines in companies relying on Windows OS? So kind of, did you have it only on the Windows side or you were as well attacked on the Linux side? It comes from Sandro as well.
Yes, the attack was only based on Windows, and we reckon that because Windows is so widespread and the attackers really wanted to carry on quickly, they must have realized that it was mainly Windows-based, but lucky enough, all the Linux environment was kept untouched. The attackers progressed very fast. As Daniel said before, we're seeing actually attacker groups that can hack systems within minutes and not hours. And lucky enough, they carried on very fast, and it was only Windows machines that were affected.
Okay. And even if I understand the attack correctly, even all your already encrypted data was encrypted again, or how did this happen?
All the servers were encrypted, but our backups were unharmed. The only problem was because the first attacker, they were in the systems probably in May time, so we couldn't just restore the systems because then all the malware would still be in place. And that's why we decided to set up new environment and then to import all the data that was properly scanned and filtered, but we had no data loss.
Okay, so in other words, the backups are really safeguarded, so you weren't on the lucky side.
Yes, they were locked away, and that was really our luck.
What would have been the plan B if those backups were encrypted as well?
Yes, I think if you're really faced with all your data being encrypted, I don't blame anybody to pay the ransom. We were in a lucky position that we didn't have to, and I think actually, for me, it's not an easy way just to pay the ransom to make it go away fast, because we're actually we're damaging ourselves because the attacker groups will grow with that reinvested money, and the next attack will be stronger. That's why I honestly believe if you can make it, even if it's the hard way, and not pay any ransom money, that's the way to go. That's what we could do.
Just another curiosity question which came in as well from Sandro. She's our almost best question typer here. She asked what happened with the person who clicked at that starting phishing mail. Any action on your side? Or
Actually not, because we realized that he was not the only person. The spear phishing attack targeted around 10 or 15 people, and they were all in the sales department. So that means that they regularly had contact. And I think what we did, we picked out the one guy after the recovery time, when all the systems were monitored, he clicked on another email. And then we had to inform him, please don't do that. But all the other guys who had the first incident, we let them do an e-learning session, we informed them, but there were no consequences. Because at the end of the day, these targeted attacks and the emails, they really look very good, and I don't blame anybody.
Just curiosity question from my side as well. When I listened to your story, it sounded like you had already a trained crisis commander team, or you had a clue in which order you tried to rebuild your system. it was by accident or already trained once?
I have to admit it was accident. It was mainly based that we had a very good crisis team with a military officer on the top, our chief finance officer. And it was not so much because we had good crisis team procedures in place, but we managed to build the team from scratch to get up to speed fast and then work on the priorities. So yes, one of the lessons learned was certainly if we were better at the crisis management faster, maybe it wouldn't have been 4 days, but maybe only 2 days with lost operation.
Thanks very much for openness. Question to Six and Daniel Coray twice. One from Barbara Fuchs. She's asking, hi Daniel, how you quantify your cyber risk at your company?
That's a hard one. The good thing is I have the chief risk officer here and chief security officer as well. Maybe you want to help me on that. I can't tell you a number, to be honest.
Okay, then I will disclose, of course, a little bit the answer here. Well, we quantified on risk priorities, of course. I mean, there's always the boundaries of how close that risk will attack our core system. And finally, we know a little bit crown jewels. We know which system helps us to beneficial support our operation. Either it's critical for Swiss market infrastructure, like all ATMs or trading or clearing system, or B, revenues are generated mostly out of those systems. So we know which system we have to follow up, and based on that, we classify the risk as well. Then the following question, which comes as well to you, to Daniel, if someone at a critical time communication is broken with your supply chain, and customer, what would be your action and control it? It means you know what if your core supplier really gets hacked. To which extent you treat those third parties?
Yeah, we try always that we have multiple communication channels with them. In my example, which I mentioned during the presentation, was the mobile network, because it was still working. Was the only one. Therefore, yeah, not really prepared at the end.
But if you wouldn't be able to reach out to your third party, you kick them out of your network, do you disconnect them finally? What's the final action if no answer
Yes,
comes in?
the countermeasure was really we blocked the whole domains, the emails at the perimeter already. All the software we get from that company was double-checked 3-4 times, and we stop at the moment all the interaction with the company and all the software processes which were in place already, because it was the plan to roll out a software upgrade to all ATMs at the same weekend. Therefore, yeah, shit happens. Okay. Therefore, we stopped that until we have a confirmation the company is clean and back to life again.
Okay, thanks very much. Following up question to Neal, to UBS, what would be your strategy if attackers attack you with out-of-box permutation and combination, and then the system prepared by the end program or the company will fail? I mean, if you get by out-of-box attacks, multiple scale, what would be a reaction of a huge bank in Switzerland?
I'm not terribly sure I understand the question. I guess it would depend on what the effects are, how the attack propagated, what was effective against it. What was it? I would need more specifics.
No, it's kind of if you get a out of the box permutation combination of different attack vectors, so from different angles at the same time.
Right. Again, it depends. Like if
against your online bank and your trading platform,
right,
and different other means.
But if they're all, let's say, relatively unsophisticated attacks, and the different controls work against them in serial or parallel, then presumably things are behaving as expected. I mean, it's a bit theoretical of a question. I would need more specifics.
Yeah. If you explained in your speech as well with the threat intel, and you know which is important, the risk and the reaction. in other words, then you have for every single different threat you get an according run book to maintain and fight against it?
Well, it's not really that simple. I mean, again, you want to extend your controls as far out as possible. So, no threat intelligence. If the threats are going to try to attack you with phishing, okay, well, going back to the education and awareness, try to make your employees as aware as possible of what these phishing emails might look like. If you have specific threat intelligence, then perhaps you certainly want to educate and make your users aware, but perhaps you can intercept the emails as quickly as possible. If they still click on it and you have a certain type of malware defense, for example, then perhaps the malware that was contained or the link that it links to would not be as effective. Or if you, and this is hypothetical, I'm not describing ours or any other organization, but if you have network segmentation that prevents lateral movement, you don't want to rely on any single control to stop any one type of attack. You want to build, as I said, a layered defense. And these control catalogs that I mentioned and the frameworks that you can use help you structure and understand, well, what are the different opportunities to break the attack chain so that any subsequent phase is as ineffective as the previous phase.
Okay. One of the combined questions which I heard when I listened to you, Neal, was you said your data is your friend. So meaning you're collecting a lot of data as well. How you overcame the discussion with your compliance team regarding GDPR and the privacy stuff, and
okay.
the user behavior.
So to be clear, I wasn't talking about client data. I wasn't talking about data on humans or persons. I was talking about, for example, logs on your firewall logs and generating. Very technical data. Yeah. So there was a general statement: data is your friend. Data is something to be protected, but when you say data protection, I think the assumption there is client data protection, protecting data privacy. When I mention logging and logging the environment and audit logging, for example, that's more technical data. Now, which, by the way, you need to protect as well, but it has fewer implications from a data privacy perspective because it's not data on humans.
Okay, thanks very much, Neal. Great. Then we have one or two questions to Olivier, which I got here. One of the question was inside the measurement you showed up with the volatility in the Bitcoin and then in the share market. What was the reason behind that volatility? And if you can demonstrate that there is a manipulation on it, what would you recommend from your point of view to mitigate that problems?
Well, there is discussion, for example, to introduce, and this has been done on equities, to introduce circuit breakers so that you stop the market to run. But on the Bitcoin market, it's impossible. So and if you speak about regulation to people who buy Bitcoin, they will not like it. So I think that. You can't. But what I think that one of the message of the paper is be careful when you enter those deregulated market. Be careful, okay? Because you know that there are really big fish there, and you will be probably the guy who will be eat it, and you will not eat the other. Okay. This is one of the message of the paper.
Have you self-invested in
Bitcoin? No.
I guess that was the answer. Yes. Thanks very much. So let me scroll shortly through the answer and question, what we get more. A question to Andreas, which I have newly received. Do you think that legislation will require data breach, like it's already in the EU GDPR?
Yes, I think we're seeing in the Swiss law that's coming up that you will have to report cases like that as well. So yes, I mean certainly that's coming, and I think as well what we're seeing probably from FINMA is lots of the rules and regulations are slowly moving as well to the industry. So I think to me this is a normal process because, as I said before, it's not just banks and insurances who are affected, but all the companies, and that will certainly be reflected as well on legislation.
Okay, thanks very much. One question to the hacker here in the room. The white hacking and the experience you had when you started 9.5 years ago. Do you think the countermeasure which the financial industry has taken in the meanwhile made it harder to success, or it's still easy peasy with playing actors and being successful?
No, I think on the technical level they have done a lot. It's much more difficult because what I've explained today, it's more to gain access. But this is only the beginning of an attack. Then you have to do lateral movement and these kind of things. And this is not trivial at all. They also started to invest much more in awareness campaign and to train the people, not only their employees, but also maybe their delivery service in the last years. This means we encounter more and more people that stops us in the floor and ask, what are you doing with the printer? But still they are missing to bring us to the reception and clarify anything. Like they started to know that there is this type of attacks that they have to react, but we are not there that they do all the process until the end in a proper way.
Following up question to that, what you just said, why you still try to break into banks on physical side when it's that easy? Well, I listen to all the speaker here to just spearfish and you're in anyway. So it's much safer to do the way around overnight at Christmas. The good period is coming up. Nobody will be there.
This is an excellent question, actually, because normally when you break in, it's not to demonstrate, the main goal is not to demonstrate that it's possible because most of the banks already know that it's possible. It's just to have one case to create more awareness, one very plastic case to show to your employees, because most of the employees nowadays, they know they don't have to click on a link, they don't have to do this and this. But if you show a real case scenario that someone break in and then infected the network, the awareness, let's say, effect is much bigger. This is actually the reason why we do this type of activity. Not to demonstrate, but to raise awareness.
Okay. And a follow-up question regarding the phishing. You said phishing always works. Does it mean anything for you, the quality, if you get a positive rate of 85%, as you said, or if a bank get a rate down to 3 or 5%, does it mean something to you, or you just say it doesn't bother anyway because I need one successful click and that's it?
Yes, actually the idea is to try to minimize this amount of people in the different departments. Like if you can just bring it to a few percent, but the most important statistic that you have to look, it's not how many people that we click on it. The most important it's how many people who clicks that notify and inform the person. This is the percentage that you have to have a look on it. Then it can also be 10% that will click on it. But if all these 10% will just inform the security person, it's much better than only 3%, but no one of them will inform the security.
So in other words, the speediness is very important if people report, the more people report, the better you will be aware and can block your system and take your safeguards.
Exactly, and due to this, you have to build this culture to be able to give feedback in some way and don't have repercussion.
Okay, the last nasty question to everybody here in the room is about cyber insurance and the coverages of those. I would wonder what's the opinion of the people sitting here, should we go for cyber insurance and coverages, or just should we leave it on the side? I mean, this is a debate where you always have very strong opinion, left or right. Large bank like UBS, what's your opinion, Neal?
Well, I don't have a strong opinion. Insurance is a mechanism to manage risk. You're transferring risk to the insurance company. The costs that any one firm will incur from a successful cyber attack depends on what that firm is and what the insurance will cover. For example, a bank has a lot of data, right, and is regulated. And if a firm loses data that's regulated, then you're looking at different types of costs as opposed to, say, an industrial control system manufacturer, which doesn't have as much client data and maybe doesn't have the same regulation, but might have public safety concerns, for example. So it depends on what your losses are that you're actually looking at through your scenario planning, through your threat modeling. If this happens, what badness would happen, but also what would the losses be? And what insurance products are available out there as a mechanisms for transfer, in addition to mitigation, avoidance, acceptance, and all those other risk management techniques. Where is insurance a useful tool for risk transfer that's suitable to the types of losses that we hope we don't have, but might actually if all these different things happen? Now, that differs company by company, what their risk appetite is, what they want to transfer versus mitigate, and what their answer for. There's also the regulatory and the public and the client expectations of don't transfer that, mitigate it. That really is case by case, what your industry is, what your risk acceptance is, and just what your leadership and your corporate principles guide you to is using insurance as a risk management tool.
And what's the opinion of UBS to that question?
Well, again, I think that it's something that everyone should consider and investigate very carefully. Well, what kind of coverage do you need? What kind of services will the provider offer us? What actual coverage are we? Does it cover just fines? Does it cover the prevention side, the mitigation side, the response side? Will it cover an external firm? So those are things that our firm and everyone else takes into consideration.
Okay, thanks very much. And your other opinion on that very nasty question?
No, I don't think so. So I think that it depends indeed what type of cyber insurance you are looking at. If it's insurance or very, very large extreme losses, I think this will be extremely difficult to quantify. Okay, so and in that case, you have to rely on some reinsurance mechanisms, like when you want to insure a plane. So this is extremely difficult to do. Now, if you think about cyber insurance for small risk, for example, for a retail person, okay, so you're at home and you are attacked and you want to buy something which will insure, then it's feasible, because indeed what you will play is mutualization of small risk. So I think it's very, when you speak about cyber insurance, what are you speaking about? So it's two different worlds.
It's open. That's a very open question, yes. So I think to wrap up that question, I would say it's risk appetite and the method, how you would like to mitigate or to transfer it, or you have the liquidity to take it anyway in by your own forces. So final end, it's up to the companies and to individuals to think about the risk out there. So I would say we close up here with the Q&A. Thanks very much for all the speaker and all the questions and we got from the audience here. And Sandro, you do the closing, I guess.
Thank you, Thomas. My dear speakers and participants, first I would like to thank you in the name of Jochen Dürr from SIX, the name of Markus Bürgi from SFI, and also, of course, in the name of the Swiss Risk Association, in my name, for your excellent contributions today, and also all the participants at home for your interest and dialing in. Also, a big thank you to Barbara Meyer, to the SIX security team, and everyone in the background who made these events possible, which is more effort than you could think of. The large number of today's participants shows us also that cybercrime is no longer just a topic for some cybercrime experts. Now it's on everyone's agenda. But the problem can only be solved by broadening and deepening the know-how of the topic and internalizing how quickly a wrong click can be fatal for yourself or for the company. Of course, the topic gained even more relevance because of Corona, as the Home Office offered cybercriminals more surface to attack. Presumably every one of us was just a click away to become a millionaire due to an unknown uncle who recently died somewhere far away. But a few years ago, such mails were actually quite easy to identify due to design, language, spelling mistake, or content. But today, such emails are, even for a professional that is cautious, experienced, quite easy to trap in. The level of cybercrime reached a level where I think it's tricky to understand what a fraudulent email, spam, or phishing attempt is versus just a business mail with a link. Today, our speakers showed you what strategies you can take. They showed you some insights, what you have to consider, how to deal with the topic from a regulatory and best practice point of view, and what it ultimately means to be a victim of an attack that worked. The more digitalization advances, the more it permits that companies' business processes, the greater the risk that companies will become victims of cyber attacks. Switzerland has begun to give the subject the necessary importance, but much more effort, time and money will have to be invested in order to be able to say with confidence that the subject is under control. We will continue with our contribution to this important topic and will offer similar events in the near future. So stay tuned as a member of SIX, SFI or Swiss Risk Association. I hope you enjoyed the evening as much as I did. I wish you all a very nice rest of the evening and stay vigilant and update your firewalls. Thank you.